Good morning. Welcome to Just Truth with Apostle Dwayne. So today is day 3 of talking about the subject of what is it? Um, Critical race theory. Okay, so I've got. I'm doing this a little different. Before I would go through. What is it? StreamYard, but I'm trying to increase the quality of the video because I've tried to watch a few of them and they were a little bit problematic trying to watch it just because the latency was so slow, and so I'm trying to speed things up and get it to where it's a better experience for whoever's tuning into the broadcast. So if you could please in the chat, just let me know, if it's looking any better than it has been in the past. Okay, so this morning I'm going to be going on day 3 of, I was talking about critical race theory. Now, in the past, what I've had is I've had banners that I could pop in and out because I had them already preloaded into StreamYard. But right now, because I don't have that set up, I'm just going to be talking off the cuff. And then also I was planning to do, I've got scheduled to do your right now with Apostle Dwayne, right after this at normally which happens at 8 o'clock. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that back for just a few minutes. I'm going to push it back to 30 minutes because I need to try and get it set up so that I can use this software better. I don't want to, I don't want everything to not run correctly. But I can already tell from my own looking at it here that because I'm not going 2 steps, to my streamer, then to YouTube, it already looks a little quicker. I mean, there is a little bit of latency, but hopefully the sound and the video are together. Whereas before, you would have a really slow, problematic video, then you would have, and then the sound would go in and out just because the signal wasn't that good. Okay. And so right now, this is day 3 of talking about the critical race theory. Now, so critical race theory, opposed to critical race theory, just so you know, just right off the bat, I'm not opposed to critical race theory or anything which actually looks at something critically and fairly, and then gives you information that you can reliably use to make a decision based on truth. So now this broadcast, this ministry is called Just Truth with Apostle Dwayne. It's all about truth. If you don't have truth, what you have is lies. Lies don't help anybody. Okay. Now, part of the problems that we have lingering here today in the United States and really around the world is the first problem that we all have is the sin nature. So we're fallen. And because of the sin nature, man is prone to do things that God says is not good. Okay. Because of sin, the sin nature, man is by default a wicked being that does wicked stuff. And now I have some comments here. Race entitles you to nothing. Race convicts you of nothing. Since sharing the race of a victim does not make you a victim, sharing the race of a villain does not make you a villain. We are all equal, entitled to equal protection before the law. The only real justice is impartial justice. Government has no right to discriminate based on race. Now, it's funny. There's a lot of people who you get on these platitudes and it's like, okay, the government is supposed to be impartial. And so let's do a bunch of dirt. Let's do a bunch of evil. Let's set up systems where we've taken from you, stolen from you, not made you whole, not paid you back, not giving you anything for what we did. But then now we're going to be fair from here. We're going to be fair from here. From here on, it's going to be fair. So just or anything now that we've got everything and we don't pay anything back. Okay. Now, unfortunately, you have a lot of people who their stance is exactly that. And then at the exact same time, so here you've had some people that have been victimized, that haven't been made whole, and their descendants. And then you have at the exact same time, you have the people who are the victimizers that took and stole and did everything, and then they go on like nothing happened. Okay. Now, this person, Michael Coffey, who just made these comments, he and I, we conversed a few times over since last night. He started sending me messages and whatnot. And I asked Michael Coffey about what was his opinion of January 6th. He said he had no opinion. So now here you have someone who has making these bold pronouncements that anyone who's involved in CRT or in favor of it is supporting Nazism, or it's a Nazism. It's linked to Nazism and Marxism. These are the arguments against CRT. But if you understand what the context, first of all, racism and enslavement and all the things that CRT analyzes, the systems of government that support racialization of people and manipulation of law and injustice. These systems were established long before Marx was even born, long before Nazism. This stuff started 400 years ago. Marx and Nazism, that was last century. Okay, so you have people. So now here they're saying that these tactics that CRT exposes were started or linked back to Marxism and Nazism, when in actuality, if you really look at it, you'll see that the tactics used in Marxism and Nazism were actually derived from things that happened here. For instance, you look at the Trail of Tears that happened in the United States, where they displaced the indigenous Americans who lived in Florida and the South, and they moved them out west on the Trail of Tears. Well, a similar thing happened about 50 years later, not even 50, about 20 years later, in Armenia. I believe it's Armenia. It's the area between Turkey and Palestine. And they had a lot of people who lived there, and basically they emptied that land out. They marched the people across they could repatriate the Europeans who they were going to move into Palestine later after World War II. So you had, between World War I and World War II, it started probably in the late 1800s up until after World War I, they were clearing that area out, making it ready for moving the European Jews in there. Okay, so that's a tactic that they copied, that the Turkish copied from the Trail of Tears, which happened here in America. And so you have these things that have happened, and you have these arguments. Now, the reason why CRT is getting back, challenges someone else's control or their norm or something like that. If it has actually got some teeth, the people who are in control or who have things in the way they want it, they don't want that information to come out. So they're going to say whatever against it. Okay. And they're going to come against it because it matters. It matters what you think. Okay. And so they're not going to allow you to hear information that's going to remove power or stuff, And so, I said this in the previous broadcast yesterday, and I think I may have said it on the one on Wednesday as well, but mankind is in competition with mankind. People are fighting over territory and stuff. Okay. And because we fight over territory and stuff as as two different consequences of the fallen nature and the fall of man. Man fell at the falling of man back in the garden. Since then, man has just been evil, and man has had, and because the judgment was that man had to work to eat. Now, I heard someone say this years and years ago. I can't remember the man who said it, but he said at the point when God said that the land is cursed and you and I have to work to eat, man has been trying to figure out how to get onto another man's back so the other man could do his work for him. And unfortunately, in this country, a lot of the and it's not just here in the United States, it's around the world. Really, the way the world has been reconstituted since the rise of the European powers. Basically, there's been systems put in place and around the world that have everything is aligned. Okay, and so the, like, for instance, the slave trade and the government by constitution and all this other stuff. This stuff was spread, and now it's the norm around the world, but it wasn't always this way. Okay, and the fact of the matter is that in this country, in the United States, people, myself included, who are descendants of people who were enslaved in this country, who had their rights stripped from them, who were treated as cattle, reduced to less than human, and then made to live in the same country and pay the same expenses or more for everything, while at the same time having lost not only of the passing on of wealth, the passing on of the systems, the passing on of the structures from previous generations, but also the passing on of inheritance, the passing on of rights, the passing on of control. And so you have these people who they get on these platitudes, like this guy here, Michael Coffey. Oh, the government should never get involved in doing things by race, but it does it all the time, and it's that's how this government was established. But when you bring that up, well, why are you going to make current generations pay for that? Well, aren't my current generations paying for what was done? And so there's no real fairness. Okay, now this is why I come to the point today. The reason I come to the point today of talking about this is because, and I alluded to it yesterday, or actually, I spoke on it directly yesterday, but I'm going to speak on it again today. Critical race theory, from what I have studied of it, some aspects of it I don't agree with, like the intersectionality stuff that was put in there. I don't really agree with that from the standpoint that's there's other stuff, intangible ways that these things are operated to place a people in perpetual underclass is necessary for us to understand. Okay, you're brainless if you don't think that you need to look at these things. And there's a lot of people who work against their own self-interest, and you can't really do anything for people like that. Whereas there are other people who want to maintain the status quo and where everything is. And so, but the real dividing line is, what is the truth? That's why this ministry is called Just Truth. I'm going to bring you just the truth. Okay. And the truth is that one day we are all going to go before the judge. The only reason that the people of the North were willing to engage in battle against the people in the South to get rid of slavery, there was a number of reasons, but the main one, if there was any reason that really undergird and set in stone why the people of the North were willing to fight the people in the South, is because they knew the conviction of God was telling them they were going to be judged. You see, it's the preaching of the gospel that there is a God in heaven and that he is a judge, and that he's going to judge, and he's going to quantify you, and you're going to reap what you have sown eternally. Okay. The reason that the North was able to win, the reason that the North was able to get the number of people on board to fight against the South, and you have to understand that the South was, the North and the South were in competition because the South had more money with fewer people. as far as the ruling class. There was fewer white people, and they had a higher concentration of wealth. But then there was a high concentration of enslaved people who had no rights, no property, no ownership of anything. They didn't own themselves, or their self ownership had been taken from them. And so the North, had some. There was some spite between the North and the South based on that the South had wealth, but the South's wealth was ill-gotten gain. Okay. Whereas in the North, there was discrimination, there was racism, there was things like that, but it wasn't to the level that it was in the South. And here, so there's that natural dynamic, of the people who were getting ill-gotten gain from the enslavement and brutalization and raping and mass torturing and all kind of other stuff that they did in the South, that the South doesn't want to own up to. They didn't do anything wrong. You hear them tell it, hear their descendants tell it, what they did was right. Okay. And so here you had a bunch of wicked people that was doing wickedness, and they were reaping financially in the short term. But once you die, you go before God. And so now here you had in the North, you had a lot more people. The abolitionist movement was all believers, was all Christians, mostly Christians at least. Okay, that's the only reason why the North was able to rally out of just be two countries. But if we lost, here we have a perpetual slavery system that was never going to end if they couldn't get rid of it, which is why now, even now today, you see people who are proponents the way they were in this country. And that ain't going to happen. Okay, we're not going back into anybody's chains, period. Now, but on the other hand, we still do have systems of slavery happening in this country. The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery in all cases except a convicted felon. Okay. And then you look at the whole prison industrial complex is built on top of black bodies for the most part. And so here you have people who, especially when you look at the privatization of jails and prisons and stuff like this, you've got people who are making money off of people being housed in jail. And then you look at the gross disparities in the prosecution of the laws and all this stuff. Why am I saying all this? The reason I'm saying this is just normal. This is normal for people who look to their own interests and victimize other people. The only thing that changes these types of circumstances, the only reason that the North was willing to go to war against the South, truly, for on the subject of life and death, the only reason was Christ, was the preaching of the gospel, for the knowledge of the evangelism and the continual force of evangelism of people telling people, listen, man, you're going to die. You're going to go before God. You're going to be quantified. You're going to spend eternity in hell. You're going to burn. Hell's going to be thrown into the lake of fire. If we as believers don't take the forefront on ministering the gospel and preaching the gospel, it all devolves down into these different arguments about, well, is CRT right? Should the government be doing this and that? Let's go to the government of heaven. What heaven say? He says, and the scriptures that I showed you yesterday, and then the day before also, in the scriptures clearly, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. There's nobody, at the exact same time that the deists, they were not Christians who founded this country, who wrote the laws. They were not Christians, period. Okay. You look at Franklin, you look at Washington, all these people. There's a surface cover of Christianity on this thing, but it is not there. And so it's just like they wrote in the laws. They were chanting about freedom at the exact same time that they were enslaving people. They were writing into the Constitution, we hold these rights to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with the rights of to pursue life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm probably butchering that. I'm just going on memory on that. But the bottom line is, at the exact same time, they were enslaving people, and they had reduced people by race to cattle. And so here they were talking about their freedom. They were talking about the freedom of the white people white race that they had created, and and they were talking about systems that they had maintained for them and their posterity, their future generations. They were not talking about the people that they had enslaved, because they had denied them their humanity. Okay, and so you may be able to play with the moral platitudes. You may be able to hide behind different terms of pretense. You may be able to ignore the truth and play with words, but the fact of the matter is your rhetoric means nothing when you face the true and living God. The true and living God. He's the only one that has the power to convict the heart and change people from the heart. If the heart is not changed, the actions will not change. You have so many people right now in this world dying today, dying in their wickedness, dying in filth, dying in the systems that are created in this world, and they think they're fine. They think they're fine. They think that they're okay. But they know in their heart that something's wrong. They know that it's not right. They know that they are not right with God, and the fear of death grips them unless they have been brainwashed into some other form of foolishness to make them think that they're okay. And so you have a lot of people in this world walking around today. They hold on to things that are not right. Their heart is not right. You can show someone they're wrong all day long, but if they are not willing to admit it, you haven't done anything but waste your own breath. And this is where things like CRT and other arguments lose weight. You can show someone the truth, but if they're not willing to admit it, if the heart is not right, and if they're not under the conviction of right and wrong, they're not going to change their opinion because there's no reason to. And so the reason that this is important is because this is becoming a more and more secular nation. This nation is being secularized at an alarming rate. It's so fast, it's absolutely astounding if you did not have the weight of history to balance it out, to see it. If you have the weight of history and you can see this is what this country was just 3 decades ago. This is how this country operated just 4 decades ago, just 5 decades ago. And if you had that, you could at least say, man, I see a drastic change and it's happened in my lifetime. Okay. And so the one thing that is necessary, to getting people to get on the right accord and get in line with one another is not trying to get the people in line with one another. Is when you get the people in line with God, then they will be in alignment with one another. You can't help it. Okay. And this is what has changed. In the past, the civil rights movement, throughout the 20th century, had a weight of conviction that you could not deny, had made a better impact, made the strongest impact. And it's just like when you look at the tactics, the nonviolent tactics, they were nonviolent in action, but it was still, they were violently going into places. They were going in peacefully, but they went. Okay, that is warfare. Okay, and so and they had to be fought for. There's no rights. You look at Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall had to go and argue cases in scary places, and then take those things all the way up to the Supreme Court. That was a fight. And likewise, now today, your rights that you have as a black person or a minority in this country are all based on black people. On anybody who's not a white person in this country, any rights that you have are based on the struggles of black people fighting for you to have rights. And that also extends to the white people who are in the homosexual movements and others from our struggles, leaping ahead of us and expecting us to not partake of what we won. Okay, that ain't gonna happen either. Okay, and so we have to understand that just because you can tell someone the answer and show them the truth unless there's a conviction by the word of God. They do not have to respect it. They do not have to listen to it, and they won't. They're going to hold to their foolishness and think that they can skirt around the subject and get around the issue and never have to answer for their complicity, their complicity or their agreement with injustice. Because God examines the heart. He examines the heart and the motives. And what you say will convict you when you stand before the true and living God who searches every person. And if we move back to God, if we humble ourselves as a people, truly, not singing songs and all this other stuff that we think we're doing that God's pleased with, he's tired of these songs sung by all these people, especially when you got people who are believers mixing the clean with the unclean. Okay. And so you're a sinner and that you need grace and that you need to repent of your sin and go before him and get right. If you can't do that, none of the rest of what you do is going to even matter. And so you have so many people who think that just because we engage in things to try and make ourselves seem like we're holy and righteous and whatever, God is not pleased with that. If your heart is not truly broken by the things that you do wrong before him, by the cost that it costs, you're going to be rejected. Okay. Now you may be able to dismiss what I'm saying. You may think that I'm just some religious guy on a rant, but I'm not. I'm telling you, the only reason why the civil rights struggle was able to get the impact that it did in this country was because it unified people behind someone, and the someone was Christ. Okay, and if you remove him out of this context, if you're trying to just reason with people on reasoning's sake and arguments like that, you remove the consequence. There's a whip and a carrot. The carrot is, there's blessings, but the whip is you're going to be judged, and you need that because some people will respond to the carrot, other people respond to the whip. But unless it's spoken by people of God who are anointed, who called by God, there's not going to be any weight there either. And so the main thing that we need in the time that's coming is to not allow ourselves to slip into becoming a fully holy pagan society, because once that happens, there's not going to be any check. There's not going to be any reason for the wicked to not be more wicked, to not try and instill new systems of enslavement of all kinds. There's people right now enslaved and sex slaves. There's people enslaving people around the world right now today. Okay, and it's a problem. But the places where that exists and those situations exist is in places where God is not preached. In the people of God, there's no reason for someone who does not believe in God to ever do anything right. And unless we get back, it's going to change. Okay. So again, I'm not against CRT, but I can tell you, I don't think that it's going to have the weight. It's so. This is Apostle Dwayne signing out, and I'm going to do the broadcast for right now in just a little bit. All right. Hopefully, this is a better experience. Thank you.